So I know I'm standing between you and lunch. So I'm going to try to give 4 predictions in about 10 minutes because we know that in this environment, everybody has a short attention span. So we've been hearing about the important things that are going to matter in the next year. Yes, in technology, it's mobile, it's wearables, it's 4K. So, and my firm spends most of our time looking ahead and trying to understand what's going to impact both media and technology companies that's not necessarily on everyone's radar screen, or what's happening and is going to be even more important. So when I look at some of the things that are most important, I think we're going to see the triumph of fan culture. We're going to also see the fact that technology companies are going to they're going to go from licensing content to creating it themselves. The idea that there's a whole new consumer is expecting a whole new sets of ways of experiencing content on all devices. And then finally, that consumers have viewed big data as very creepy and are willing to give their information for things that are going to affect their experiences. So let's begin with fan culture. Where does this really begin? Where did the sort of Cambrian explosion around fan culture? And it's about 50 Shades of Grey. And I don't know how many people in this room have read it, or how many people are willing to admit that they've read it, but the stats around this book are unbelievable. 90 million copies, 52 different languages. It's the fastest selling paperback of all time, and wait until the movie comes out. So but people don't remember that it started as fan fiction. And it started as a creation that was based on Twilight, that E.L. James based it as part of a fan fiction, and it was posted on websites. And it was based on, let's keep moving. It was based on a lot of the things that happened during the course of the Twilight saga. And by the way, the characters, they didn't have the license to the characters, so Jacob and Bella and each one of them became another character, just to cover this up. And people like to discount fan fiction, and especially publishers, because they're not original, they're based on stories that already exist. But in this case, here we had something that began with a book that was published by an Australian publisher and then turned into this massive hit. And the people have to understand that the reason why is it became with the user became the creator. And another place we're seeing this is Let's Play. Let's Play.
Let's Play.
And what Let's Play is, it's the ability for individual game developers, game users, to provide some sort of a video around them playing the game. And they have comments that are, in some cases, humorous, irreverent, and also very critical. And their voiceover actually gives the game more credence. And the people who are creating these have become web superstars. And what's happened, though, is the game developers started off by really putting these people out of business, by issuing takedown notices on YouTube. And now they've suddenly realized that giving those fans, giving those people the ability to create themselves has dramatically expanded the popularity of their games. So Blizzard and Ubisoft and Valve have now embraced these creators. And if you look at the massive number of views that they're getting, in this case, 21 million. And some of the individual creators are getting as much as 10 million apiece. And so what we're seeing is the traditional game developers are looking at this as a way of showing people how to play the game. I mean, what's a better way of saying that users are having fun than letting them explain how they're enjoying it? Another example of this is Doctor Who, a show that's been on the air for 50 years. And yet, when its 50-year anniversary came, the users and the fans started creating content on Tumblr and trying to make their own voices heard, trying to find variations of the story, but at the same time promoting the series. And as a result, the 50th anniversary of the show had 21 million posts on Tumblr. It's more views than the MTV Video Music Awards, a company I used to work at, and more on Tumblr than even the Super Bowl. So it gives you a sense about how important fan culture is, not just for traditional entertainment, but also where we're about to see the entertainment business go next. And it comes full circle, where Amazon is now creating its own forum for fan fiction. Its own way of saying, yes, somebody else has the copyright on these characters and these stories, but when fans create a version of them, they become even more exciting and they help the core book or the short story. So next, let's talk about originals. We've all known, yes, Game of Thrones, it's been on HBO for years, and what's interesting is it's become its own fan culture. In fact, one of the most popular names that people are giving to their children is Arya, and it's one of the ones that comes from the series. And we have people, yes, they're creating their own, but HBO's been doing originals for many years. What's different is technology companies, people that we wouldn't have thought of before. And so we have Netflix, which really for many years has been just licensing content that already existed. We go to Netflix, we want to see TV shows, we want to see films, but these were hit films and these were hit TV shows. Nobody would have imagined that Netflix, either between Orange is the New Black or House of Cards, would begin producing its own. And we're seeing the same thing. Xbox has now announced that by the second quarter of this year, they're going to be producing their own programming. Of course, we see Hulu also with originals. iTunes is now going to be producing originals. Much of this is about content companies merging their interests with technology companies, but the technology companies are now in the lead. They're producing their own content. What's amazing is Netflix has been nominated for an Academy Award last week. And it's for a documentary that's gaining a tremendous amount of viewership. It wouldn't have been even seen in theaters, but now it's on Netflix, and millions of people are watching this documentary. It will certainly be a favorite to win the Academy Award. And of course, there's Jay-Z. Jay-Z releases his album in conjunction with Samsung, and it has a massive following. Beyond the downloads that Samsung bought, this is a song that's being listened to everywhere. It's on the radio. People are buying it, and all because it launched with Samsung, and Samsung actually supported the writing of the song and its performance. So next, let's talk about snowfalls. And I don't know how many people know where this term has come from, but it begins in 2012 with an article that the New York Times published about an avalanche. And it was an incredibly different way of exposing content to a user, of demonstrating to a user that the internet could produce a content that was high definition, very engaging. But it begins other places. It begins a couple years back. It begins in 2007, where Instapaper created a way for people to read, a much easier way to read a web page, to convert it into text and take out all of the banners and all of the things that were incidental to the content. It then, in terms of a timetable, it then moves forward into being able to have large format, designs that take up the entire screen, designs that provide a much better experience, but at the same time allow the user to see a great deal more. And what's happening is this is over time responding to what users want. It's not about what publishers think that they can create. It's not about the best format for advertising. In fact, it's a way in which consumers can be even more engaged with the content. Then we move on to responsive web design. The idea that something could be created for one format and easily viewed on a number of different devices. Once again, an idea that makes it so it's seamless for a user. Then this really begins with The Verge. The Verge publishes a story, and it's about the newest PlayStation, and suddenly people begin to see, users begin to see what a great format this is. And then the New York Times publishes in 2012, publishes the Snowfall story. And of course, we've got a lot of other people following in this. And then this shows you the story from The Verge about the timeline of what happens in terms of The Verge being able to create this new format. And it really comes to its full realization when The Guardian publishes its stories about Edward Snowden and creates this entire HD, interesting format that makes it so exciting for a user. And it suddenly set the bar. Users are used to, they're used to other formats, they're used to television, they're used to video. And now we're creating something that's so exciting for them. What's the takeaway from this? Well, it's really that we're going to have to serve the user. And as this timeline moves on, expect there's going to be much more innovation in terms of the presentation of content. Because we're not just looking in terms of what we need to give users, it's also what users want. It's what users will find the most engaging. And now there's a huge explosion. We're going to see this across so many different sites, so many different web publishers will be creating new formats. And I think when we look at this over the next year in 2014, we should not be surprised to see even greater innovation in these formats. And because it comes down to experience and it comes down to what the consumer, what the reader, what the user is expecting from this medium. Now, big data. It's been a huge amount of jargon. And everywhere people are talking about big data. And yet consumers can't stand it. They hate it. They hate the idea that anybody's gathering all this information, yet they see no real use for it. And so the idea is they sort of capture big data, they lock it away, and then they torture it to tell you its secrets. And by the way, it's to tell you the secrets of each one of us, each of the users. And so what is this? Where is this going to take us? Well, we know because of privacy concerns, the consumer doesn't really want their data gathered. But there's another side of this that I believe we're going to see this year, and it's little data. It's data that we can capture about each interaction that makes the experience better, that gives the user a way of seeing content, seeing what they're doing, functionality that is tailored to them. And so it's not about big data anymore, it's going to be about little. And so what do I mean by little? It's data that comes from the actions and the activities that users take as part of a media experience. And it enables the web publisher to create a better experience for the user. And it's data that I, as a user, want to explicitly share. Something because I know it's going to create a better experience. So if you look at it from a user experience perspective and from a user, big data is creepy. Little data is your friend. Little data makes things much more useful. And the extent to which we can create an environment where it's explicit that a publisher is using little bits of data to make what you can experience better, what you can do better, it's going to create a whole new experience and environment. And if you just look at all of the things that are important, how far have you read in a story? How many videos have you watched? Do you view in large type? Are you sharing? This allows a much, much more customized content experience, one that also enables a user, one that continues in a continuous cycle, gets the user to want to give more and more. I know it's going to be better. I know that I'm, as a user, I'm able to see so much more and get much more out of what I'm doing on whatever device I'm using. So when we look at little data coupled with big data that, of course, everyone's going to continue to gather one way or another passively, it's going to create not only a better user experience, but it's going to create other things, better advertising, better products, a better way of integrating within a publisher's entire program. So as I look at the year ahead, these are 4 things. They're not on everybody's radar screens, but they're going to be critical to the way that publishers create content, the way publishers create functionality, the way publishers create design, and the way publishers create experience. So what is really going to matter this year in each of these? It's the ability in fan culture to be able to take what fans themselves are creating, giving the fan agency, giving the fan the ability to create themselves. It's going to be about the original creation of content by technology companies, and we as users will win because there's going to be more and more great content financed by us as users and as viewers. It's going to be about the ability of us to use small data, little bits of data, and then finally design an interface that begins with snowfalls, and then leads us to Snowden, but altogether are a better way of displaying that information, a design and a user interface that people will want. So ultimately, what's going to matter this year, it really is going to come down to the user and how we create content, experiences, functionality, interface for the user. So thank you very much.